In the previous video, we created our VPC in AWS and our virtual network inside of Azure. Now, that actually created a subnet ID for us. It created a virtual subnet for us already. It's public. It has an internet gateway associated with it and a routing table. We can see that, we have our routing table right here. We can see that we have our internet gateway right here that's pushing out to the internet. But what about if we want to create another subnet in this site, or say maybe a private subnet? That way you can have internal communication with your devices, and then you also have subnets that go out to the internet. Well, we can absolutely do that. So let's go ahead and we'll click on subnets, and then we'll click on create subnet. You're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to choose your packet VPC ID. Unless you created a different VPC, then go ahead and choose that one. And then at this point, you're going to want to give this a name. So we'll go ahead and we'll call this packet private 1. And we'll go ahead and we'll scroll down, and we can go ahead and we can choose our availability zone if we want to. So we have one subnet, our public subnet in US East 1A. Maybe we want to do US East 1B. So we'll go ahead and we'll choose that. And then we want to choose our CIDR block. Now keep in mind here, we cannot overlap with our existing CIDR block. Our existing is 10.0.0.0/24. So let's say we try to do something like 10.0.0.1/32, and then we go ahead and we try to click create. We can see that it actually overlaps. So what we're going to want to do is maybe we'll do something like 10.0.10/24. And then we can go ahead and we can give this some tags if we want to. So for the key, we can say subnet. And then for the value, we can say private 1. So we're letting everybody know, hey, this is a subnet and it's private. So at this point, we can click create subnet. And then now we have that subnet available. Looks like our name didn't save there. That's okay. You can say packet private 1. We'll click save here. And then if we click on subnet ID, we now see our entire subnet ID, including the routing table, the network ACL. But if I go to route table, notice it's actually private. So what does this mean? Well, it actually means that the target is local, and that ultimately means that this subnet is not going out to the internet, okay? So interestingly enough, there's actually this checker here. You can now check network connectivity with the reachability analyzer, but we know that that's obviously going to fail because we don't have a internet gateway attached to this. Now, speaking of internet gateways, if we go back to our subnets here, and then we say choose packet again, we go to our public subnet, we scroll down to route table, we can see that there is a IGW, or an internet gateway, attached to this. Now, what does that mean? Well, what that means is anything that's associated, like an EC2 instance, for example, with this subnet means that it can reach out to the internet. So we can do things like pull updates on a server or something like that. Now, if I go to internet gateways and I type in packet here, we can see that it's attached to our packet VPC, and here's our internet gateway. And it's pretty basic. So if we go to internet gateways and we click on create internet gateway, you can essentially create any internet gateway and then attach it to any subnet. And that's what allows you to get out to the internet. Now in Azure, it works pretty similarly. So if we go back here and we go to subnets, for example, we see that we have a subnet 172.18.0.0/24. What we can do is we can create a gateway subnet. And the gateway subnet is what allows you to connect Azure, or this virtual network, to other devices or other networks. So what we'll do is we'll just create a basic subnet here. We'll say private 1. Now, what I like about Azure is that it actually gives you a recommendation. So like in AWS, when you're creating subnets, you kind of have to like give the CIDR range. Now, arguably, you probably already know what CIDR range you should be giving it. With Azure, it does, give you that recommendation, which is really nice. And then if it's going to be a public subnet, you could do something like specify a NAT gateway here, route table, etc. Same thing with AWS. And then we can click save here. So as you can see so far, and funny enough, Azure and AWS, from like a networking standpoint, they're both pretty much the same. Like you can't they're not reinventing the wheel or anything like that. It's really nothing different than what you're already doing in your data center. It's really the same thing. The only difference is the interface. So Azure looks like this, AWS looks like this. That's pretty much the only difference from that standpoint. So what I want you to think about as you're going through this is, don't be consumed by what the interface looks like, or oh, this looks super confusing or anything like that. Just think about your core networking skills and think, okay, VPC equals data center. I've worked in a ton of data centers before. Oh, subnet, I know what those are. I've created a ton of those on routers before. So do your best to, not get consumed by what it looks like, because overall, like when you're jumping into this, it can absolutely 100% look confusing. But I promise you, if you just think about your core networking skills, the whole interface and everything that it looks like and all that, that's going to kind of just be in the background.